Hello. Welcome to tonight's stream. Tonight we're going to be continuing on the Jack Valenti files. Hopefully you had time to watch yesterday's edition of the show. If not, I would highly advise going back and watching that episode first. But, all right, looks like we're all set. We're up and running, and I'm going to continue. So, what we're doing is we're continuing through the Jack Valenti FBI file. And as we discussed yesterday, Jack Valenti was, in fact, the shooter on the Grassy Knoll. All right, give me just one sec. All right. We're on page 56 out of 583. This is a memo within the FBI file. To Director FBI and Special Agent in Charge, New York. From Special Agent in Charge of the Washington Field Office, Jack Joseph Valenti. Note the circle between Joseph and Valenti, indicating there's a missing name. That missing name being Malachi. SPI booted December 23 next. Booted is deadline. Deadline December 23 next. Bureau Tel December 13 last. No CC New York. White House has requested special investigation of Valenti, who was a special aide to the president. Born September 5, 21, Houston, Texas. CSC conducted investigation on appointee in 1961, at which time they interviewed, and then there's several lines of redaction. And then it says, New York, who knew appointee as classmate at Harvard during 46 and 48, obtained his comments. Booted must be met without fail. I had a hard time filling in a lot of the gaps on his associations at Harvard, particularly because there were just so many, it's hard to know who these guys talked to. All right, a similar memo to Director FBI and Special Agent in Charge, Houston, from the Washington Field Office. Bureau Tel December 13 last and Houston Tel December 13 last. Review of appointees file at CSC reveals following background as of June 61. Residence 37 to 42, 1507 Alamo. 45 to 46, 1340 West Bell. 46 to 48, Harvard University, Cambridge, Mass. 48 to 53, 1340 West Bell. 53 to 54, 2241 West Holcomb. 54 to 62, 402 Bernard. And 60 to present, 3777 Norfolk, apartment 16A. All residences are in Houston except for Cambridge. Education, 1931 to 34, James Stephen Hogg Jr. High School. 34 to 37, Sam Houston High School. 37 to 46, University of Houston. And 46 to 48, Harvard University. All Houston except for Harvard. Employment, 637 to September 20. 38, Horowitz Theater. Horowitz Theater as usher under, and it's redacted. I think I actually figured out that name. I have that name in my notes somewhere. There was some follow-up done by the FBI who spoke to this guy, and I think I was able to put two and two together on who actually was the owner and manager of the theater at the time. But I'm pretty confident there's a connection between the Horowitz Theater, the Texas Theater, and the Alabama Theater, which Raoul is known to have frequented. September 20, 38 to 1942, 45, and 53, Humble Oil and Refining Company. Where's notice here, September 20, 38 to 1942. That puts him about the age of 16, 17, because he worked there as a teenager. And then 45 to 53, after he gets back from the war, he goes back to Humble Oil. He was a manager of sales and promotion in the advertising department, and January 153 to date not shown weekly and Valenti advertising agency. That was his agency that he started with, Weldon Weekly, all in Houston. Following additional interviews were conducted by CSC in 1961. Then we have a redaction, Southwest Telephone Company, 1114 Texas Street. Then there's another redaction, Continental Oil Company. Then there is another long redaction, parentheses, known since 1938. So these are people whose names are redacted who are being used as character references for Valenti. This I find has some significance. Was a member of group in town who had a fence company going known as the Tropicoa and another operation, Jamaica Beach Real Estate Development in Galveston. Okay, so Jack Valenti was heavily invested. He was one of 3 or 4 partners in this Jamaica Beach real estate development. So Jamaica Beach, it's kind of crazy because they petitioned the city of Galveston to let Jamaica Beach be its own town. And it only has like 900 residents. And what it has is a bridge, and it's got a couple houses, and that's it. So why would Jack Valenti want to be an investor in the 1950s in a beach real estate development company and then get their own incorporation, which stands to this very day? I don't have an answer to that question. However, we know that Galveston had a port, and Galveston was heavily being used for smuggling operations. And what could you do with a house on the beach in a town that's surrounded by Galveston, but not policed by Galveston police? It was policed by the Jamaica Beach Police, which was a police force of 3 or 4 men total, probably directly under the control of Valenti and his partners in the incorporation of Jamaica Beach. Why would you do that? Smuggling, perhaps? Could this have been a perfect on-ramp for smuggling operations? It sure could have. And seeing as how Valenti was CIA this whole time, you can rest assured that the CIA had a hand in this operation. The fact that it's connected to Houston and several properties that ultimately will end up connecting to the Houston space stuff they have going on down there. This all strikes me as way too convenient. But I'm just speculating here. Let me move on. So let me reread this. Was member of group in town who had a fence company going known as Tropicoa and another operation, Jamaica Beach Real Estate Development in Galveston. Galveston, Texas, of which appointee seemed to have a part in both. N. Perrin, don't know what that says. Civil Service Commission, City of Houston. Perrin knew well since both students at University of Houston. Okay, gotcha. So they're talking to a bunch of people who were involved with Jack Valenti, involved in these operations. I have a list of the people. There's only 4 of them. One of them went on to be the mayor. I think we talk about him later on in this file. All right, continuing on. Notice they keep highlighting the circle between Joseph and Valenti, indicating the missing middle name. All right, now we have a report dated 12/17/63, titled Jack Joseph Valenti, Character Special Inquiry. Synopsis, no record G2. Okay, so they went to look for U.S. Army counterintelligence records at Fort, looks like Holabird, Holabird. They were checked on December 16th, 63, through the commanding officer, whose name's redacted, and they didn't locate any record of the captured individual. So Army intelligence, or counterintelligence, didn't have any information on Jack Joseph Valenti. All right, another memo, too. Director FBI and SAC St. Louis. Jack Joseph Valenti, SPI. Re-Buretel, December 13 last, review of CSC files reveals appointee served in U.S. Army Air Corps from March 12, 44 to October 16, 45. Serial numbers 181-15646 and 0772238. So, appointee served in the U.S. Army Air Corps from March 12th of 44, Jesus Christ, the fucking war is almost over at that point, right? By March of 44, Hitler was well on his way to having his ass kicked, right? So the idea that, here's my opinion on his. My opinion is that his war record is fake. Like, none of this, I don't believe any of this is fucking real. I believe that he did go off to some form of recruitment via intelligence, where he was trained as a sniper and an assassin. But there's no real record of his medals that he got and all the shit that they claim that he had 51 bombing missions. Like, where's the records for this stuff? I can't find it. None of it exists as far as I'm concerned. March 1244 to October 1645. Well, October 1645 is long after the war is fucking over, right? Let's continue on in reading this and see what we can decipher. All right, to Director FBI from Special Agent in Charge Washington Field Office. Reference Jack Valenti on 12/18/63. Redacted personnel officer. The White House office advised Paul Doherty, the position of special consulate to the president does not require confirmation of the Senate. Governor Herter being the only one due to special legislation setting up the job. In the absence of indication that U.S. senators and U.S. congressmen know appointee, they are not being interviewed. Okay, so this is really just an additional memo that indicates that Valenti's position in the White House, beginning on November 22nd, after he shot the president, does not need to be approved by the Senate or any other committees. All right, another juicy one to Mr. Moore from C.D. Deloach. Subject, Jack Joseph Valenti, again with the indicator that the middle name is missing. White House aide. Walter Jenkins, special assistant to the president, called on 12/17/63 and made reference to our previous conversation concerning captured individual, which occurred on 12/12/63. At that time, I furnished Mr. Jenkins with a blind memorandum concerning a check of FBI files on Valenti. I also informed Jenkins that we had information indicating that one redacted, reportedly a top hoodlum and prominent gambler in Houston, allegedly blank. Here we are back to talking about Joe Lucia, the top hoodlum and bookmaker in Houston, who allegedly had some sort of sexual relationship with Valenti. This was told to the FBI by an informant. Jenkins, this is all redacted, said, I told Jenkins that the same unconfirmed information reflected that blank was alleged to have, so that blank is either Valenti or Lucia, probably Lucia because of the length of the redaction, is alleged to have, and then the long redaction here is had a sexual relationship with Valenti, because Valenti's gay as fuck. That you can take to the bank. On the occasion of his call to me, 12/17/63, Mr. Jenkins specifically asked that the above-mentioned derogatory facts be covered in the full field investigation on Valenti, which is now being made. So here we have Jenkins, Walter Jenkins, who was already working in the White House under Kennedy and now under Johnson. And Mr. Jenkins specifically asked that the above-mentioned derogatory facts be covered in the full field investigation on Valenti, which is now being made. So is Jenkins trying to sabotage Valenti here? Next one, teletype, urgent. Jack Joseph Valenti. SPI booted December 23 next. You must be certain relationship between appointee and blank or redacted is thoroughly resolved, which would include allegation redacted. Okay, so the allegation that Jack Valenti had a sexual relationship with this Houston bookmaker, who I can identify as no one other than Joseph Lucia. This was a kind of a big deal, but obviously it didn't prevent him from getting the job, right? This next one is just a duplication of the previous one. You must be certain relationship between appointee and Joseph Lucia is thoroughly resolved, which would include the allegation that they had a sexual relationship. All right, scrolling on again, you see these constant notations here in the documents that they know that it's missing a middle name, right? So what the fuck kind of job is this that the FBI is doing? What kind of, do you think if you or I put in an application for anything or got hired anywhere and they were doing a background on us, they would just let it slide that we had hidden middle names? No, because remember, the FBI's job is to cover for the CIA. That's their job. That's what they do. Number one. The targeting of the, political rivals and all that shit comes secondary to covering for the CIA. The CIA runs the fucking show, if you ain't figured this out. And who does the CIA take their orders from? It ain't here in the States, I'll tell you that much. All right. So, here we come across our first contradiction. The date December 18th, 1963, Field Office File Number SL1611311, Jack Joseph Valenti. Character Special Inquiry, Synopsis. Valenti served in the U.S. Army Air Force from 2/17/43 to 3/11/44, and from 3/12/44 to 10/16/45. Received honorable release from active duty. Okay, so remember the previous document here didn't mention the earlier dates, right? All it mentioned was that the records that they pulled showed that he was in the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Army Air Force, from March 12th to October 1645. But now, in this summary synopsis, we have some more information indicating that Valenti served in the U.S. Army Air Force from 2/17/43 to 3/11/44. Okay? Why does his service end and then it picks up again the next day? That doesn't make sense if it was a continuous run. And why would his stint have only been just over a year and like a month or 3 weeks or something like that? That doesn't make any sense. To me, I sensed the fingerprints of obfuscation here. Details at St. Louis, Missouri, a review on December 17, 1963 of the military service records on file at the Military Personnel Records Center, St. Louis, Missouri, for Jack Joseph Valenti, serial number 18115-646, indicated that he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Force Enlisted Reserve Corps on May 18, 1942. So here we're back into 1942, and entered on active duty on February 17, 1943. Okay, so let me just remind you what we've already covered here today. The first document that they pulled showed that he had been in the Army Air Force starting in March of 44. That was the first set of documents they pulled. Then they pulled this other information indicating he had multiple stints starting in 1963 till March of 64. And then again here, it's showing that he's in the Enlisted Reserve Corps May 18th, 42, and entered in active duty on February 17th, 43. It might seem like I'm fucking splitting hairs here, but this is all very important because none of this makes any sense to me. To me, anytime I see the term reserve, that's CIA. Okay, if you're in the Army fucking reserve, like Tulsi Gabbard, and you fucking work for Army Reserve, you're CIA. Sorry, like that's what they do. That's the excuse you get to get out of fucking Dodge whenever they need you, and you're on your like 2 weekends a fucking month of your like pretend I'm in the Army shit, right? No, reserve is a cover for fucking intelligence. And then it says he was honorably discharged March 11th of 1944. As an aviation cadet at Douglas Airfield, Douglas, Arizona, by reason of completing training. Okay, so this is where I'm kind of getting at with all this. He's in the Air Force or whatever till October 44. But he didn't even fucking graduate from his training until March 11th of 44, and he did it here in Douglas, Arizona. You see what I mean? Like, this guy was spared and protected. He was not sent to the war. He was not sent to the fucking front line. He was sent to goddamn Military Reserve Academy, and then he went to the Air Force Reserve Corps, and then he goes into active duty, but he's still in training. And then he doesn't get out of any of this shit until March of 44, but he's out of the military entirely by October. Do you really think they sent him for March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October? 7 months. You think they sent him over to fucking Europe for 7 months, and in 7 months he did 51 bombing missions in Italy and France? I don't fucking think so. They protected this fucking guy, and they got him some credentials as having been a war hero. That's what they did for him. He was appointed and commissioned as second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Air Force, serial number 0772238, on March 12, 1944, and entered on active duty on the same date at Douglas Army Airfield, Arizona. He was honorably released from active duty on October 16, 1945, as a first lieutenant at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, by reason of demobilization. Okay, so let's go over this again, because I'm trying to debunk the fact that fucking Jack Valenti was ever a goddamn war hero, done 51 bombing missions, and it's obviously he never left fucking America. until, it says here, he didn't finish training until March 12th of 44, and he entered active duty on the same date at Douglas Airfield in Arizona. So he's commissioned in March 12th, 44 in Arizona. And then he was honorably released from active duty on October 16th, 45 as a first lieutenant at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Okay? By reason of demobilization. He never went to fucking Europe. I don't believe for a goddamn second he went to fucking Europe ever. Let me see, read the next paragraph. He served in the U.S. Army Air Force Officers Reserve Corps inactive status from October 17, 45 to April 1st, 53, and received an honorable discharge by reason of declination of an indefinite appointment. His military occupation was shown as aviation cadet and pilot, and his civilian occupation was shown as editor. He had foreign service in the European theater, and he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters, and the European Campaign Medal with 3 bronze service stars. Okay? Bullshit. Bullshit. He did all of that in 7 months. He spends over 3 fucking years in America training, pretending he's a fucking war hero, and then he does 51 bombing missions in 7 months. Go fuck yourself, Jack Valenti, you lying scumbag. Not fucking possible. That's going to be one of the first things I do after I finish my fucking book and have more time to dedicate to fresh research is I'm going to fucking spend some time going in and finding out these specific units that he was allegedly in and what they were actually doing in those months of the war and where they were. And they better fucking correlate to what he told us. But I don't think they're going to. His character and efficiency ratings ranged from unknown to excellent, and there was no record of any court-martials or absence without official leave. The date and place of birth were shown as September 5th, 1921 at Houston, Texas. All right, on to the next. This is a Washington Field Office teletype to New York, dated 12/17/63. Report of Robert L. Stevenson, Jr., titled Jack Joseph Valenti, Special Inquiry. Synopsis, New York, advised he had known appointee, there's a big redaction here, so the name is redacted. It says he's known appointee since 46, recommends him highly regarding character, reputation, loyalty, and associates. Details, another long redaction. New York advised on December 18th, 1963 that he has known the appointee since 46, stated he met the appointee at 46 at Harvard Business School, and he has maintained a close association with the appointee since that time. He stated that the appointee is in the field of public relations and has his company in Houston, Texas called Weekly and Valenti. He advised that he has the highest regard for the appointee and his wife and knew nothing of unfavorable regarding the character, reputation, loyalty. No hesitation in recommending him for a position involving national security of the United States. What a fucking horrible recommendation that turned out to be, huh? Jack Joseph Valenti, Washington Field teletype to Bureau, Cleveland, dated 12/17/63. Dated 12/20/63. Title, Jack Joseph Valenti, Character, Special Inquiry. Synopsis, redacted, describes Valenti as friendly, likable, enthusiastic individual whom he believes to be a loyal American citizen whom he would recommend for a position in the United States government. Details. Redacted. I'm assuming this is another student at Harvard who we went to school with, who now lives in Ohio. It says, redacted, Ohio advised that December 18th, 1963, he was a classmate of Valenti's at Harvard Business School from the fall of 46 to the spring of 1948. Redacted stated that, as he recalls, Valenti had served in the United States Air Force prior to entering Harvard Business School. Redacted said he recently read an article in one of the national news publications indicating that Valenti had been appointed as an aide to President Lyndon Johnson, and he thought at the time this is just the type of job Valenti would be interested in getting. He said that, as he recalls, Valenti married either a present or former secretary of President Johnson, but he's never met this individual and knows nothing about her. Redacted described Valenti as likable, friendly, active, enthusiastic individual who he could possibly be classified as an operator. Holy shit, would I call Valenti an operator. Absolutely. Which he explained by stating that Valenti was so active in supporting Johnson during the 60 Democratic Convention, he wrote Redacted a letter asking him to support Johnson. Redacted stated he has never met any members of Valenti's family, and as a matter of fact has no recollection of his ever mentioning any members of his family. He said, however, he believes Valenti to be a loyal American citizen on the basis of character, reputation, and associations, and would recommend him for the high position in the United States government. Next one. Title of case, Jack Joseph Valenti, references Bureau teletype to Boston dated December 13th, 63. Washington Field Office teletype to Boston dated December 17th, 1963. Special inquiry, education verified and favorable. Former fellow students at Harvard Business School recommend reability, character, reputation, and loyalty to the U.S. Results of credit and arrest records checks set out. Details. The credit and arrest records at Boston, Massachusetts were reviewed at the request of investigative clerk, and it's redacted. Education. On December 17, 1963, redacted to Secretary's Registrar Office, Harvard Business School, Boston, Massachusetts, advised records of this office disclosed Jack Joseph Valenti, born September 5, 1921, place not listed, attended this school from October 1946 to March 1948, at which time he received an MBA degree. Redacted said he previously received a BS degree from the University of Houston. She said while he resided in Gallatin House, a business school dormitory, she advised his permanent residence was listed as 1340 West Bell Street, Houston, Texas. Redacted said his record was completely favorable and there was nothing contained therein which would reflect adversity or adversely on his character, reputation, associates, or loyalty to the United States. Acquaintances. On December 18, 1963, and there's a long redaction. It says Massachusetts. And on December 19, 1963, another long redaction, Massachusetts. So they interviewed two people up in Massachusetts. Advised they attended Harvard Business School with the appointee from 46 to 48. They say that they have met him on occasion of reunion since that time, but do not meet him frequently. They stated, however, he has impressed them as a man of ability, good character, reputation, and associates, and one whose loyalty to the United States they have had no reason to question. They stated that on the basis of their knowledge of the appointee, they would have no hesitation in recommending him for a position of trust and confidence with the United States government. Credit. On December 16, 1963, personnel of the Credit Bureau of Greater Boston Incorporated, Boston, Massachusetts, which covers Cambridge, advised the files of this office contain no record identifiable with Jack Valenti. Arrest record, December 16th, personnel of the Office of Massachusetts Commissioner of Probation, Suffolk County Courthouse, Boston, Central Repository for all criminal conviction records in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, advised the files of this office contain no record identifiable with Joseph Jack Valenti. On December 16, 1963, personnel of Boston, Massachusetts Police Department advised the files of this department contain no records on Jack Joseph Valenti. Moving on to Special Agent in Charge Houston from Director FBI, Jack Joseph Valenti. Re-Airtel dated June 21, 1962, caption, quote, Criminal Intelligence Program, Weekly Summary, unquote, UR File 92-34, last paragraph, page 2 above, Airtel indicates informant received info from a reliable source that, redacted, and this same individual, parentheses, redacted, informed him, redacted. Resolved this info by check of plain manifest and other independent sources. Also furnish additional info re Valenti's holdings in Galveston real estate development as indicated on page 12 of re-rep. Also advise duration of Valenti's membership on board of directors of San Jacinto Savings and Loan Association. Surad summary results by Cobb, December 30, next followed by rep. Okay, so this here in particular, let me see if the next paper talks about this. No. All right, so what this is inferring here, this is jumping back to where it has a redaction. Last paragraph, page 2 above, Airtel indicates informant received info from reliable source that redacted, and this same individual, parentheses, informed him, redacted, resolved this info by check of plain manifest and other independent sources. Okay, so what this is referring to is this is going back to Jack Valenti's wedding in June of 61, or was it February? I don't remember. It was early 61 to Mary Margaret Wiley, Johnson's former secretary and the love of his life, mother of his children. Valenti marries her as a cover for Johnson, right? Because he's gay as fuck. They then go on a honeymoon to Las Vegas, where it is said that his entire trip and his stay was paid for by the mobster who owned the Tropicana. I forget the name offhand. I don't remember if it was Modalitz. I don't think it was Modalitz. It was a sub guy under Modalitz. But, yeah, so that's what this is referring to. This is referring to the fact that Valenti, through his mob connections, had his whole honeymoon paid for by the mobster, right? That, of course, all the stuff that comes up in this file that indicates they investigated Valenti, none of it goes anywhere, right? None of it fucking goes anywhere. Until 1966, when finally enough was enough and he had to go. And he went. And they were onto him because of his relationship with Raul, who was his former brother-in-law, Vincent Calderon Jr., right? So, but I'll get to that probably in a week or so when we get to the end of this file. Also furnished additional info, re Valenti's holdings in Galveston real estate development as indicated on page 12 of REREP. Also advised duration of Valenti's membership on the board of directors of San Jacinto Savings and Loan Association. So he's involved in real estate. He's involved in banking. He's working for the CIA, right? Do you think all this stuff is independent? No. All this stuff was at the behest of the CIA because that's how that works. For the information of the Bureau, redacted is subject of Bureau File 924660, Houston File 92193, has been investigated as a top hoodlum of the Houston office, and is known that he has in the past conducted a lucrative bookmaking operation. He is employed by Redacted, who has also been investigated under the anti-racketeering program. Redacted is an extremely wealthy individual who heads Redacted in Houston, which is a private oil-producing company. Redacted is characterized as a public relations man for Redacted. So this is back to talking about Joe Lucia. It's really hard to dig up information on this stuff because this is what you get. It's all redacted. Most of the information I found on Joe Lucia I found through newspapers.com and finding old newspaper articles about him, and that's where I found an article that showed that it was Valenti's and Dinersteins and Caltagarons at his daughter's wedding back in like the early 40s. Wild stuff. Report of S.A. George D. Reimers, 12/20/63. Subject Jack Valenti, special inquiry. Jack Valenti, born 9/5/21, Houston, Texas. According to birth records there, he attended University of Houston from 9/38 to 6/46. When he received his BBA degree, being absent in military service from 2:43 to 9:45. Yeah, he was gone for what? 2:43 to 9:45. No, that's incorrect because we have the document that I just went over that showed that he was in the reserves back in 42, right? So his scholastic record from UH was good. Review of Library of Houston Chronicle set out, including information. He is now a member of Board of Regents, University of Houston, and information of other public activities. Employments Houston verified include Humble Oil and Refining Company from 38 to 52, and while he was attending UH, and including leave of absence while attending Harvard Business School. Also verified was present business activity as partner in Weekly and Valenti, Houston advertising agency. Employers regarded him well, including, and that's all redacted, confidential sources and associates stated he's a close friend of Redacted, who is commonly known in Houston as a gambler and bookmaker. Acquaintances all regard him well, including those in other advertising agencies. Valenti has signed a trust agreement, putting all of his property in trust, excepting a house in Houston and one in Austin. And personal effects, including cash, according to his accountant, who will be trustee. Valenti parents and sister maintain favorable credit reputation, Houston, Texas. Redacted, regarded as somewhat slow at times in meeting credit obligations. Criminal checks, Houston, Texas, negative, except that of Joe Valenti, father of Jack Joseph Valenti, was sentenced 11/2/37 to 2 years in the Texas State Penitentiary for felony embezzlement from Harris County. He was discharged 2/18/39 and granted a full pardon by Governor W. Leo Daniel in 1/15/40. So this is an interesting incident in Joe Valenti's life. Because Joe Valenti, as we saw on the FBI list of files on him that covered everything from treason to faking citizenship to you name it, the guy was a mobster, right? For sure. Like an OG mobster from the 1800s kind of fucking mobster. And so, yeah, so he eventually gets a job working for Harris County, but he embezzles a bunch of money and goes to jail. It's kind of ironic because Jack Valenti goes on to marry Margaret Wiley. Her father did the same thing, worked for a fucking bank, embezzled money, and then he ended up going to prison also. Kind of strange how that worked out, but yeah, Joe Valenti's a big mystery to me. There's a whole lot more about him I need to learn, but there's virtually no information. You know, how do you put this stuff together when you don't have any data? Birth on December 16th, 1963. Redacted junior clerk, Bureau of Vital Statistics, 9th floor, City Hall, Houston, Texas, advised her. Birth records file show 1960 that Jack Joseph Valenti was born in Houston on September 5th, 1921. She said the file reflected that both of his parents were born in Houston, Texas, being shown as Joseph Valenti and Josephine DeGeorge Valenti. Education. Redacted custodian of permanent records at University of Houston made available to James Russell the records of Jack Joseph Valenti. This record reflects that he entered University of Houston September 1938. He obtained prior credits for entrance from Sam Houston High School, Houston, Texas, from which he graduated in 1937. He entered the University of Houston as a business major. This record reflects he resided at 1507 Alamo, Houston, and he had been born in Houston, Texas on September 5th, 1921. Father listed as Joe Valenti was shown to be unemployed at the time. Jack Valenti indicated he was employed full-time at the Humble Oil and Refining Company in the advertising agency. Periods of attendance of Houston, University of Houston. I think we've already covered all this stuff. Covers the timing of his alleged war record, which I think is still kind of a joke. The record of Valenti's attendance at the University of Houston reflects that he had made 1C and all of his other grades were A and B in grading system where A is superior, B is good, etc. In June of 1946, Valenti requested a transcript of his credits be forwarded to the Graduate School of Business at Harvard University. It was also noted that Redacted, head of the School of Business, wrote a letter of endorsement for Valenti to the graduate school at Harvard. He was given an excellent recommendation. It was noted that during the period of Valenti's attendance at the University of Houston, he was employed by Humble Oil and Refining Company. There was an indication that he was required to have some of his tests rescheduled because he had to travel to all of the schools in the Southwest Conference in connection with the scheduling of football broadcasts of the games of these schools that were sponsored by the Humble Oil and Refining Company. There was nothing noted in his record at the University of Houston that would be to his discredit. Okay, now this becomes really important. Where he says here, there was an indication that he was required to have some of his tests rescheduled because he had to travel to all of the schools in the Southwest Conference in connection with the scheduling of football broadcasts of the games of these schools, okay? This is a lie. This is bullshit. As we will see. We will come across the guy who actually handled all this stuff, and he doesn't know what we're talking about. So Valenti lied about all this. The Houston Chronicle Library. On December 16, 1963, Redacted, librarian for the Houston Chronicle newspaper, made available for review by S.A. James Russell the file maintained by her on Jack Valenti. This file indicated that on May 8, 1949, Jack Valenti, a University of Houston night school student, had risen in a series of campaigns to the highest student officer in the University of Houston, and had now been elected to president of the Ex-Students Association of the University of Houston. It was pointed out that he had been named outstanding student for 2 straight years at the University of Houston, was acting president of the Texas Student Government Association in 1942. He was reported to have never lost an election as a fucking student. God, it could make you fucking puke. Didn't you hate these fucking cocksucking overachievers when you were growing up? I sure as fuck did, and I went to an overachieving high school. Fuck. On July 31st, 1951, it was announced that Jack Valenti had been elected president of the Harvard Business School Club of Houston. Valenti's position was shown as supervisor of sales promotion for the Humble Oil and Refining Company, and other officials of the Harvard Business School Club of Houston were shown as Curtis M. Smith, Vice President, Joe P. Downer, Secretary, and Robert P. Wickstrom, Treasurer. On December 28, 1952, it was announced that Jack J. Valenti and Weldon T. Weekly had resigned their positions with Humble Oil Refining Company to form their own advertising firm. On the 23rd of June, 1954, Valenti was named as a member of the City of Houston Civil Service Commission under Mayor Roy Hofheinze. On January 8, 1956, Jack J. Valenti was named Outstanding Young Houstonian for 1955 by the Junior Chamber of Commerce, Houston, Texas. On January 14, 1956, Valenti was elected to the Board of Directors of the San Jacinto Savings and Loan Association to fill a position vacated by Bruno Bagnoli. On January 11, 1958, Valenti was in the company of Mayor Louis Cutrer and redacted when they were involved in an automobile accident near Angleton, Texas, in which Valenti suffered a broken arm and the mayor a severely bruised shoulder. Valenti was apparently driving the automobile at the time of the accident. I find this incident suspicious. I will have to correlate the dates with something else. January 11th, 1958. So, could Valenti have been out on a mission somewhere, doing something in January of 1958, where he broke his arm in the mission? The reason I even suspect something like this is because there was an attempt on the life of Trujillo down in the Dominican Republic, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember the date offhand, but there was a failed assassination attempt on his life. I guess he was chased by like a Jeep, and the Jeep tried to assassinate him, and then the Jeep ended up wrecking, right? And so that was when it kind of hit me. Man, could that have been a similar situation to Valenti and why he broke his arm for real? Because I don't trust a fucking thing in this file in as far as anything that claims Valenti's a good guy, right? So there's lies all throughout this file. So yeah, that I found very interesting. Oh, but Louis Cutrer. Okay, so the mayor of Houston, Louis Cutrer, was the mayor of Galveston. Louis Cutrer was one of his buddies who he grew up with, who invested in the Jamaica Beach stuff. On April 23rd, 1958, it was announced that Valenti had been appointed to the Board of Governors for Houston University of Houston. November 12th, 1962, there was an article in the Houston Chronicle criticizing Civil Defense Director Sherwood Crane of the City of Houston for placing $651,000 of the city pension funds in the Colonial Savings Association, a company which Crane was president and a large stockholder of. It named numerous other city officials as owning some shares of stock in the Colonial Savings Association, and Jack Valenti of 3777 Norfolk Street was named as an owner of 56 shares of stock in Colonial Savings Association, and it was pointed out that he handled the advertising for the campaign of Mayor Cutrer when he was elected to this office. The article concluded by quoting the mayor as stating that it was not a violation of law or regulation for this money to have been deposited in the Colonial Savings Association, but that he was issuing a directive which would see to it that no city employee who had stock or directorship in such a firm will ever in the future serve on committees to determine where retirement money would be deposited. Okay, so you have Valenti connected to banks and people who are corrupt, right? That's already going on. But this is probably just a modus operandi for all fucking city commissions across the country, right? On August 14th, 1963, it was announced that Jack Valenti was one of 6 Houstonians who had been named to the Board of Regents of the University of Houston. On October 31st, 1963, it was announced that Jack Valenti and redacted. The address for them was shown as 2938 San Felipe. The address for them was 2938 San Felipe. That's interesting. On October 31st, 1963, it was announced that Jack Valenti and blank, redacted. The address for them was shown as 2938 San Felipe. So that's either, let me see. That is talking about either Weldon Weekly, and something that they did, and their address was at San Felipe, or it's talking about Jack Valenti and his wife, Mary Margaret Wiley. And the address for them was in San Felipe. Yeah, I'm not sure what... This is just striking a chord with me, so I don't know why, but I'm going to have to keep a mental note of that. All right. Employment. December 1863, redacted. Vice President, Estate of Will Horowitz, Incorporated, Rivoli Theater Building, 805 Capitol, advised that Jack Valenti had worked for him as an usher at the Texas Theater for 1 or 2 years. Now, I don't know that this is a reference to the Texas Theater we all know of as the Texas Theater. Although this, if it is connected, then this is the indication that the Horowitz Theater and the Texas Theater are connected. But I can't say that with certainty, because the Texas Theater is spelled Theatre, right? They spell it that gay fucking European way, not the normal way. So yeah, I have a hard time believing it's coincidence, but who knows? He said as he recalled that Mr. Valenti worked during the school year, but may have worked during the summer vacation as well. He said Mr. Valenti's family was needy at that time and needed his help. He noted that Mr. Valenti, in his redacted, he said that both of Mr. Valenti's parents were born in Houston, and Mr. Valenti is not related to redacted. Redacted said that at the time Mr. Valenti worked for him, Valenti, was residing on Alamo Street in Houston in one of 2 houses owned by his grandfather, who lived next door. He said he did not remember the house number, but they lived in only one location on that street. Redacted described Mr. Valenti as a fine boy, said he would not know one blemish on Mr. Valenti's character. He said Mr. Valenti is self-made, of the highest integrity, and he has never known him to do a dishonest act. He said Mr. Valenti's immediate family consists of his mother, father, and sister. On December 13th, 63, redacted, Humble Oil and Refining Company, Humble Building, advised that she had an employment record on Mr. Valenti showing he was born September 5th, 1921, place not shown, and Social Security number 466090583. He was a full-time employee, she said, and started December 27th, 1938, and left December 31st, 1952. He was employed in the sales department when he resigned working in Houston. On December 16th, 1963, redacted, Public Relations Manager, Southwest Region, Humble Oil and Refining Company, Humble Building, advised that he had known Mr. Valenti since Mr. Valenti's first came to work for the company, and that he himself was publicity manager for Humble, which included publication of the company house organ, advertising, and sales promotion work. He said Mr. Valenti came to the company as a high school graduate, first working as a hall attendant or mail boy, and shortly took a job as a junior clerk or assistant. Okay, so located in the lower right-hand corner in handwriting, underneath hall attendant or mail boy, it says exclusive of his, can't tell what that says, looks like it begins with an M, mobility, something, exclusive of his, I can't read the rest. He went to the University of Houston at night and advanced with the company to somewhat more responsibility as a sales promotion assistant. He said Mr. Valenti continued with the company when redacted went into service and returned to the company in 1944. Mr. Valenti himself went into service and returned to the company later and returned as a sales promotion assistant, continuing until he received his bachelor's degree. He wanted to go to Harvard under his GI rights and was at first told he was ineligible to enter. However, he made a trip to Boston at his own expense and was able to secure permission to enter the business school and attended for 18 months. Okay, so let's stop right fucking here. 1946. Harvard is the best of the best in the country. And it already said that he had received a C and other grades were B's and A's. So what does that tell you? The guy was a fucking B student. Jack Valenti was a B student. He was not Harvard material. Okay? So this is what they tell him. He wanted to go to Harvard under his GI rights and was first told he was ineligible to enter. Okay, so he applies to Harvard Business School and he doesn't fucking get in. Because his grades suck. You think he could get in there with a C? Come on. Give me a fucking break. However, he made a trip to Boston at his own expense and was able to secure permission to enter the business school and attended for 18 months. What happened on that trip up there? Whose dick did he suck, literally, to get that fucking gig? Who pulled strings for him behind the scenes to get him that gig? Could it have been George de Mohrenschildt, who he worked with at Humble Oil? Who knows? Redacted said at this time he had educational leave of absence from Humble Oil without pay. Redacted said that when Mr. Valenti returned to Humble again, Humble had increased its retail sales effort, and Mr. Valenti was in the midst of sales promotion work and section being headed by Redacted. When Redacted was transferred to the field to district sales work, Mr. Valenti succeeded him in sales promotion section of advertising and sales promotion division of the sales department in the Houston home office. Redacted said that Mr. Valenti advised that he and Redacted had an opportunity to set up their own agency. Obviously, the second redaction is Weldon Weekly, having secured Continental Oil Company as a client. So they leave from Humble Oil and they get Continental Oil as their first client. That's a big fucking deal. You think Jack Valenti was that good at his job, or he just knew people? He just knew people. He said there was no bitterness or animosity, and on the contrary, the company's relationship with him had been most cordial. He said he would use superlatively favorable terms in characterizing him, Valenti, right across the board, in every desirable characteristic. He said Mr. Valenti has intelligence, industry, and integrity. Redacted said that two matters, in his opinion, would speak well for the regard the company has for Mr. Valenti. He said that within the past year, Redacted and Valenti have been hired, that's Weekly and Valenti, have been hired to represent the Friendswood Development Corporation owned by Redacted, which is developing an area commercially near the NASA site southeast of Houston. Okay, so this is where I start to kind of make connections between Valenti and NASA and the land that he bought at Jamaica Beach to create his own little fucking mini city, right? Which I'm convinced was a smuggling operation. Okay, why else would he buy a fucking city and then have it? Why would he buy a bunch of houses and have it made into a city? Doesn't make any sense for anything other than smuggling, especially in fucking Galveston. He said that on November 15, 1963, Redacted and Valenti were retained by Humble Oil and Refining Company to assist in public relations and advertising work in connection with what is known as the West Ranch Industrial Development Project, some 7,500 acres adjoining the Friendswood project, which is being developed for heavy industry by Humble. He said that he thought both of these employments spoke for themselves. He noted that each of them had been approved by Humble Oil and Refining Company on the board level, i.e., that the board of directors or some member thereof delegated to act for the board had approved these two employments of Valenti and his firm. Okay, so who's running Humble Oil at this motherfucking time? You're talking about Prescott Bush and George Bush, right? And some other fucking inner associate scumbag on the board of directors. If you go on eBay right now, there is a fucking copy of George Bush's book signed to his good friend Jack Valenti for like $1,000. So that right there is our third party proof of their connection and friendship, right? Beside the fact that he fucking worked for George Bush at Humble Oil. So can you see like the how do I say this? Like the Illuminati goings on behind the scenes, right? The people in the know who know everybody else, right? All this shit is connected. He said he thought both of these employees spoke for themselves, blah, blah, blah. The board had approved them. Yeah, so that's super significant. On December 19th, 1963, Redacted Advertising Building Humble Oil and Refining Company, Humble Building, advised that he had known Mr. Valenti since the latter came to work for Humble Oil as a hall boy. He said that Mr. Valenti was a bright young fellow without a whole lot of family background who was ambitious, energetic, and very likable. He said Mr. Valenti had moved into advertising and sales promotion work and had worked for a while as Redacted's secretary in connection with the company magazine and advertising work. After Mr. Valenti's return from the military service, he went into advertising and sales promotion working with Redacted. And when the latter was moved to the field, Mr. Valenti became supervisor of sales and promotion and stayed at that job until he left the company. He said he believes that everyone who knows Mr. Valenti is fond of him, that he has never heard anything unfavorable to Mr. Valenti. He said he considers they are personal friends and they have mingled socially to some extent. All right, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it for today, and I'm going to pick up here tomorrow. So thank you for tuning in. If you haven't pre-ordered my book yet, please do so. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/JFK Book. When you pre-order my book, you get my notes, 4 chapters, access to my private chat. The private chat is really where the good stuff happens. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll talk to y'all tomorrow.